Good evening, and thank you. It is a real honor to be here. I had the most wonderful opportunity to meet Susan and get to know Ojai Cares. I was so impressed. It was the second month that I was here. And I actually met her husband at the farmer's market on Super Bowl Sunday, and both being, New England fans, we got into that. But then he said, you have to meet my wife. So I was excited about that. And we shared a couple meetings, and then she said, Julie, I'd love to have you talk. And what would you be interested in talking about? And I said, I would love to talk about the 5 wishes. I said, as a chaplain in an acute care medical center, I saw so much. And for those that had planned and had an advocate and spoke up, the administration listened. And in the 10 years that I was there, I went from a residency chaplain the first week, administering to a Muslim family from Dubai who had no advocate, to heading up a program that saw 6,000 patients a year to assist with end of life, to assist with ethical decisions, to assist with emergency car accidents of 18-year-olds and organ donation. And the thing that I came away with was the complexities around something that didn't have to be as complex, as intense, as controversial, as anxious, if there had been a little planning. And that was when I began to look at healthcare proxies and living wills, and was introduced to the 5 wishes. It was simple, it was clear, and most importantly, it had dignity. And I had experienced in a hospital, coming from the word hospitality, no hospitality. It was an incredibly intense, cold institution. High tech, no touch. And as I began to work with patients, a shift happened because patient empowerment is key. And it's an institution, and it began to respond. And it is your right as a patient to be treated with dignity, to be informed, and to be educated. So when Susan and I talking about this, and I got in touch with the organization that provides these forms, Aging with Dignity, they had told me about a new bill in Congress through Medicare that is going to require every physician to discuss the 5 wishes or a living will with their patients. Now, as we know, the state of the U.S. Congress today, it's in the works, but it may take years. And part of that is the funding to teach doctors how to even talk about the end of life. Because for me, I was just so surprised that a doctor couldn't have the conversation with his patient. And I would be called in, and the doctor would be walking out of the room, and I said, what's going on? He goes, well, I'm finished. I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, I can't do anything more for them. I said, well, what did you tell them? That I don't have any more medical treatment. I said, that's it? We're going to go back in there, and together we'll talk to this patient and honor them. Doctors would say, okay, we'll get your bucket list together. What? So I watched and saw how these doctors and the medical staff needed to change and develop and look at their own fear and sense of failure. If they couldn't cure, then what? So it was a beautiful journey to learn. Not only did I become the patient advocate, by the end of my 8 years there, I had a program for staff on how to be present at the end of life, especially after a code very intense process. Medical staff give it their all. And when it's over, they had no ritual for closure, no ritual to say we did our best, but to honor and let go and honor the life process. So it was that I said, this is something very passionate for me that I would like to speak about. Because number one, patients have to know you hold the power. And it could be and it's to have dignity and to get the treatment that you need and want and deserve. So 5 wishes. Helping you and your family plan for and receive what you want and deserve. Next slide. This presentation will cover the practical steps to make your wishes known and honored, how to be there also for your loved ones when needed the most, and how to follow up steps for communicating your wishes to others. So let me just ask, does anybody here have a healthcare proxy or a living will, things that we're working on? That's great. So that's wonderful. And that you're even here to continue to learn about it is really beautiful, because it is a process, and it is an ongoing process. So Aging with Dignity was the organization that provides the 5 wish forms. It was a national, not national profit foundation that was founded in 1996 based on Mother Teresa's model. And the man that had worked with Mother Teresa was so impressed with the care that she gave to AIDS patients, because this was a marginalized population that Mother Teresa could help. My brother died of AIDS in 1988. He was marginalized in the hospital. Doctors and nurses would say, "Do not touch him, it's contagious." There was a lot of fear around that type of death. And this man witnessed how Mother Teresa administered with dignity and care to that population. My brother's death was also, at the end of his life, hospice came in. Hospice was a new thing in 1988. Beautiful, beautiful service. My family then started a hospice program in Cleveland, Ohio, where I was from. So all these things are beginning to happen. Hospice, living wills, 5 wishes, beautiful end-of-life care example of Mother Teresa. So he went out and developed a document, the 5 wishes, and researched it. I'll do the next slide. He researched it and found and asked, what do people want? They want to die at home. They want to be free from pain. They want to be in the company of their loved ones. And they wanted to retain control of the care we receive. To be in the company of their loved ones. For a man that was dealing with a marginalized population, there are a lot of those whose loved ones were not able to be there, or not allowed to be there. They were in gay relationships. Families came in. Partner wasn't acknowledged, didn't have any say. That could have been prevented with a 5-wish document. How do you retain control for the care that you want to receive? So the contrast reality is less than 25% of Americans die at home, although 70% wish that they say that they would like to die at home. And dying is often unnecessarily painful and isolating. And only 20 to 30% of the population has created or done an advance directive, a 5 wishes, a living will. So the reason for this is a very stark reality. Doctors are not aware of their patients' wishes. They don't have time for the conversation. They don't know how to create the conversation. It's complex. From their standpoint, they're looking for a cure. And they haven't really been trained. I mean, that was the bottom line. They haven't been trained to have the conversation. How do you do that? We would be conversations with neurosurgeons and the heart surgeon and saying, well, the heart is alive and strong. And the neurosurgeons say, yeah, and the brain is dead. And they couldn't even decide what death was or the definition. And it was so far removed from, it was so academic. It was so distant that I just would marvel at what are we doing here? You know, what is going on? And again, let's ask the patient, let's ask the family, what would your mother want? What would your father want? And the answer was clear. He would not want to be on a feeding tube. He would not want to be on a ventilator. And he would not want to have dialysis prolong his life. And I could then say to the doctor, does not want to be on a ventilator, does not want to have dialysis, does not want to be on a feeding tube the rest of his life. We can prolong death. We can prolong suffering, not only for the patient, but for the family and staff as well, especially for the nurses who attend to these patients and see their suffering. So the reason for the stark reality is the end of life is often treated only as a medical moment. And in reality, the end of life is a very human process that is physical, emotional, spiritual, and affects us all as well as our families. The 5 wishes guides us in considering, discussing, and planning for the full end of life experience. A solution, 5 wishes. Simple format, everyday language, promotes peace of mind, helping your family avoid guessing and guilt, and you get the care you want and deserve. You do not need an attorney to complete 5 wishes. You can sit down in your living room with family, discuss it, put your wishes down in your own words. And we'll be doing that in the second half. I'm going to share my 5 wishes. And just, we have scratch paper because it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's something you want to think about and contemplate. And there's lots of little tools and prompts that I'm going to suggest to help you go deeper in what you would want. 5 wishes will address the personal, emotional, and spiritual needs along with the medical wishes. It was created with the help of the American Bar Association and healthcare experts, and it's been distributed over to 35,000 organizations to help do that. So first, I said, it's a living will. It did 5 wishes, 5 parts, first 2 parts, legal binding documents. What is a living will? A living will, sometimes called a health care declaration or directive to physicians, a health care directive, a medical directive, is a legal document in which you describe the kind of health care you want to receive if you are incapacitated and cannot speak for yourself. It is paired with the other legal document called the power of attorney for health care, also called medical power of attorney for care, designation of a surrogate. So in California, these 2 documents combined are called an advanced health care directive. So there are a number of terminologies. There's a number of nuances. 42 of the 50 states have 5 wishes, but you can get into complexity in different states because of legal language. But this is a tool, and I'm going to get into that when we actually get into the document. So I just want to kind of set, like, complex, but not. Because any lawyer, any doctor, any insurance company can make things really, really complex. And this is simple, clear, and powerful. It's a tool to promote human dignity. You do not want to be the object of a medical conveyor belt. I think for all of us that have been through the healthcare system with a chronic illness or an emergency, know the complexities of the medical care system today. And just the burden of getting to a hospital, parking, getting to ultrasound, getting back to see your radiologist or your oncologist, it's exhausting. So that's only gets more compounded in a medical emergency or the end of life emergency. And this is why this tool is so helpful to help slow that down. No conveyor belt. You go in with dignity, you go out with dignity. Because the reality of it is sometimes medicine just does not know when to stop. 5 wishes helps you communicate what you want and what you do not want, and guides the discussions for your young ones. So again, I mentioned about the states, the complexities there. 5 wishes is recognized in 42 states. So this is important. I bring this up because a lot of you may be talking to relatives that live, let's say, in Ohio. Ohio, where I'm from, is not a 5-wish state. They have other legal documents that you would have to have. But if you had a sister in Ohio and you were sharing, your 5 wishes, she might say, well, that's not approved. That's not a legal document. And I've heard that before. Somebody didn't come tonight because they said, well, 5 wishes is not a legal document. Wish 1 and wish 2 are legal binding. And when we get into the form, you will see the format there. This map will be laid out. The states that it's improved in will be laid out, okay? So I just want to make sure that that is clear because there are many legal ramifications in the end of life or in any health care treatment. If you don't live in a 5-wish state, 5 wishes does not meet current technical requirements in 8 states. I mentioned that. Laws are different. The 8 non-5 wishes states are Alabama, Indiana, Kansas, New Hampshire, Ohio, Oregon, Texas, and Utah. So the 5 wishes, they address, number 1, what person you would want to make healthcare decisions for you when you can't make them yourself. We often think of this as, and I mean, the reality of like going to a coma. Who's going to be my spokesperson? And the state of a coma is very, very fascinating from my experience. The last thing to go is hearing. Often in a coma, people come out of the coma and they will go, I heard your voice. I heard you speaking. I would go in and I do energy work around them and the nurse would go, oh my God, they resonate to your hands. It's just like they hear you. And I'm so sensitive to that component. So how wonderful if you were in a deep coma, couldn't speak, but you heard your healthcare proxy advocating for you. Beautiful. Versus doctors speaking over you as though you were not there. Patients have shared that with me when they've come out of a coma. Our healthcare proxy that you appoint only speaks on your behalf if you cannot speak yourself. My mother died of Alzheimer's. She could not cognitively speak for herself. She lost speech. She could yell. She was alive, but yet she was incapacitated. But we honored her wishes to keep her at home. And that was beautiful because she had shared with us that that was the most important thing for her. So having a healthcare proxy is a beautiful thing of somebody that you trust, who knows you, that can speak when you cannot. Not when you can, not when you cannot. You can also resend or change anything on the document at any time, and I'll talk about that. That's the first wish to address. The second wish, the kind of medical treatment you want or do not want. And we'll get into this in the document itself because it makes it quite simple. It lists out what type of treatments that you would want, not want, and it gives you really yes or no kind of thing that can help you customize or develop more, maybe what you want, or it's just adequate as it is. So, but what's important is that you're giving your family clear written direction about the end of life. And you make sure you get the type of care that you want. The third, how comfortable do you want to be? And that's complex. When I started at Brigham and Women's Hospital in 2008, there was no palliative care program. Palliative care is when there is no cure, but they want to keep the patient comfortable. Because the process of it doesn't mean that you're dying, but it means that there's just no cure. Different than hospice, but yet addressing the complications of end-of-life suffering. And after so many consults prior to that, I sat on that committee to develop the palliative care program. Dignity, comfort, no pain. So important, so important. That people would feel comfort and at peace, not afraid. We developed simple modalities to help that. Music, dimming the lights, Reiki. Beautiful things that didn't exist before, but now are available if you ask for that. How do you want people to treat you? I would be called to a room, agitated patient dying, a health aide sitter sitting with the patient, watching her favorite soap opera or, shopping show. I was just so aware at the lack of dignity that was happening in the hospital. How do you want people to treat you? Like a person, that you're there. Do not disturb. Coming in, doing vitals every 4 hours at the end of life, not necessary. And it happens all the time. There was so much noise on a hospital floor that we did a series of tests on floors on how staff tune out, because everything is stat. Everything's beeping, buzzers that they tune out, they don't hear anymore. And we had to work through, we did an ocular acupuncture program to help sensitize them again to sound. Because you could have a patient family, beeping for end-of-life support, and the nurse couldn't hear it. We developed signs for what patients were transitioning. With please be quiet, please be silent, TV's down, to create dignity and space around that. That was patient driven. How do you want to be treated? I want to be treated like a human being, and that I am here at the most important part of my mother's life. I want her treated with dignity respect, honor, and I want an environment where she can have peace of mind. How many of us have been in a hospital before? Did you get a good night's sleep? You know, can you imagine your last night? How do you want to be treated? This is an opportunity in a document to say to your doctor and to the staff, I want a do not disturb sign. I want beautiful music playing. I want my lights dimmed. I do not want any unnecessary treatment. And that brings awareness to everybody on the floor, to other families that are there. You're teaching people dignity, how to act dignified. We've got to get back to manners. This document helps not only empower you, it helps change the medical system. The last one is, what do you want your loved ones to know? A lot of people, when they're filling out the 5 wishes, fill this one out first, because it's the most important one. What's important to you, and what do you want to share? And I'm going to give kind of my inline right now. You know, I think this is the most important, because when we confront our mortality in a spiritual light, I really believe we begin to live our life. So it's something to ponder. You know, I could go out tonight and be in a car accident my last day. You know, have I told my children what I want them to know? Not just in my head, but in my heart, shared that with them. And that's the one wish that I think is just so powerful, because again, it really helps us to contemplate, what's it all about? Why are we here? So wish 1, the person you want to make healthcare decisions for you. Legally, your doable power of attorney for healthcare, often known as the healthcare agent. 5 wishes suggests choosing the right person and naming, an alternative choice. So what characteristics do you look for in a healthcare agent? Someone that's trustworthy, dependable, and they also need to be calm under pressure. Families would say to me, I don't know what's happened. We have fallen apart. Our family can't even talk to one another. We're yelling and screaming and beside themselves. I said, yeah. Most challenging time of your life, losing a dear loved one. I get that. I understand that. A healthcare proxy can be calm and supportive and honor your wishes. She can intervene not only with the doctor, but with the family as well. She's trustworthy. She understands your 5 wishes. She understands medical treatment, because that takes some sophistication. When the doctor walks in and he said, well, what do you want us to do? You're like, you're the doctor, But they ask that in a way of, it's a complex question, because they want to kind of be off the hook from not offering everything, but yet, and not get sued, because that's a reality of where we got to this great extreme of all this end-of-life care to prolong things, because hospitals got sued. Well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. So a healthcare proxy wants to say, no, she does not want a feeding tube. She's not going to come out of it and not be communicative. You can keep her alive on a feeding tube, dialysis, and a respirator. That would not be something she wants. We're not going to do that. And it's not an easy position to be in, because there are nuances. There's hope. There's a miracle. It does take somebody who is a good listener, can weigh the balance, because it's not always black and white. And even, the 5 wishes, sometimes it takes a couple days for everybody to come to a consensus on what's right, ready to let go. So you want somebody who's going to be sensitive to that process. And I think Susan and I talked a little bit about that in her can I share that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah, a little bit about wanting her husband to be comfortable with her going. And if it took a few more days of intervention, respirator, whatever, she wanted that for him. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Right. And so there's moments of grace that happen, and that's what this document is about. It's, you know, you got to write it down, but you also want somebody who's going to be sensitive to the needs around you, if that's your wish. Other people are like, hey, I'm done, yeah, I don't care, you know, everybody's unique, everybody's different. But I wanted to just emphasize it's a very intimate thing. So the relationship that you have with that healthcare proxy is very important. Somebody that you should talk to, somebody who can elicit from you even deeper, what if? It's a unique person in your life that's going to give you a great sense of care and comfort, knowing that you are understood. And she's going to advocate for you. So what kind of medical treatment do you want or not want? And again, we're going to get into this when we get into the document. This is a living will. Okay, second piece, living will. Expresses instruction for your caretaker, such as the need to take medicine for pain, even if it leaves you sleepy. And that's an important issue for a lot of people. You know, that family comes in to see their mother, they want to say goodbye, and she's so doped up that they, you know, they're like, I came here to be with her and I can't communicate with her. People struggle with that. I want enough pain medicine for my pain, but I want to be alert. I want to say goodbye to my children. Very, very important issue. And examples of life support, I think I mentioned that, dialysis, blood transfusions, feeding tube. Again, we'll get into more of the intricacies when we start looking at the document. 5 wishes is not a do not resuscitate order. So I want to make that very, very clear. DNR, it's a totally different one. So and this really is for people, elderly people in nursing homes, that they have an event, it's an end-of-life event. You know, they code, they should have a do not, it's their choice, but it's important to consider do not resuscitate. It's a very, very medically intrusive procedure, and very, very sad when a family comes in and they see their loved one after they have gone through that process. So it's a different subject. It's not a 5 wishes, but it's just something that I want to make clear that it's not part of this program. So wish 3, how comfortable do you want to be? Stresses that you want your pain managed, expresses your choices for the type of comfort and care. And we're going to get into it in the document because there are things you can just cross out right on the document. And so then wish 4, we talked about how do you want people to treat you. You can get very specific of, do you want prayers? Do you want pictures around you? Wish 5, what do you want your loved ones to know? So we're going to now get into the document and look at that, okay? The other thing that we'll talk about when we get into the document is the document needs to be signed. You need to have a witness when you sign it. And so we'll get into that, okay? So then after completing the 5 wishes, you have a little card that you can carry in your pocket that says, I have the 5 wishes here. You have to have a copy of the document to your doctor, to your healthcare proxy, and have it available in your home in light of the event. It's got to be known. It's got to be shared, okay? So now that I've overspoken for like 45 minutes, we're going to get into our document.